Genesis chapter 34. Genesis chapter 34 is where we are this evening. Jacob and his family have moved to the city of Shechem, and they are camping there. And this is a place where they might have stayed for quite a while. The text is not really indicative of that, but I would wager that they stayed quite a while here, but they end up leaving, and we're going to find out why they end up leaving tonight in Genesis chapter 34. So start reading with me in verse 1. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force. He was deeply attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the girl and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Give me this young girl for a wife." Now Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah his daughter, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob kept silent until they came in. Then Hamor the father of Shechem went out to Jacob to speak with him. Now the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing ought not to be done. So we're told about Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. Dinah is the only daughter of Jacob mentioned in Scripture. It is within the realm of possibility that he had others, but she is the only daughter of Jacob mentioned. And she was the daughter of Leah specifically, born to Leah in that situation with 4 women bearing children to Jacob. And it says that Dinah went out to visit the daughters of the land. Now, whether she was familiar or friendly with them is not really indicated in the text. This could have been her, pretty recently after they moved there, going to see what their customs were. Even some commentators say that this idiom means that she was visiting some kind of religious festival. I'm not sure about that. It didn't seem to be indicative one way or another. But she is going and spending time with the people of the land, specifically the women of the land. I will say that it's possible that these were her friends, but the text does not say. And then we want to note that Shechem's sin, of course. Hamor is the owner of this land. That's what the text says. And it seems as if the city, Shechem, is named for his son. Now, I realize that it could be possible that a relative was not there. A relative, had that name as well. But everything in the text seems to indicate that Shechem was named after this prince of the land. And Hamor owned this land. Now Shechem sees Dinah as she is out visiting, and my translation says that he took her by force and lay with her. Some translations say simply that Shechem defiled Dinah, and that leaves a more ambiguous impression about whether or not she was willing in this event. But the conclusion that I came to as I studied is that Shechem did indeed force her, and I believe that's the prevailing view of this passage. I could not find one person who thought that this was consensual in any way. So Shechem forced Dinah to do this. And then after he does this act, he claims to his father that he loves her and he wants to marry her. He's very deeply attracted to her and he speaks tenderly to her. And Hamor goes to Jacob to ask for Dinah for his son. The next thing that we want to note is that Jacob and his sons hear about this. Now, again, it's unclear in the text how this is heard. Did Hamor tell them? I can't imagine that he would have. But how did they hear about this? It wouldn't be something that you would go around telling, I don't think. So I am a bit confused as to how Jacob and his sons hear about this. But they do. Notice their different reactions. Jacob kept silent while his sons were in the field. But when his sons come in, it says they burned with anger. They were grieved and were very angry because of what Shechem had done. And their reactions, their initial reactions, keep true throughout this entire passage. Keep reading with me in verse 8. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the son of my soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him in marriage. Intermarry with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourselves. Thus you shall live with us, and the land shall be open before you. Live and trade in it, and acquire property in it. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, if I find favor in your sight, then I will give whatever you say to me. Ask me ever so much bridal payment and gift, and I will give it according to as you say to me. But give me the girl in marriage. But Jacob's sons answered Shechem and his father Hamor with deceit, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. They said to them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we consent to you. If you will become like us, in that every male of you be circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters for ourselves, and we will live with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and go. So Hamor and Shechem have what I believe they think is a generous offer. Shechem offers whatever dowry they want, whatever bride price and gift. He says, I'll pay it. Again, he most likely finds that generous. But they don't just stop there. Not only Shechem, the prince of the land, maybe one of the most important people in the city, is going to marry your daughter, but we'll intermarry with you as a people. Our daughters will marry your sons, and your daughters can marry our sons, and we will let you live among us, and it's going to be great. They're offering a stranger and a sojourner a chance to find a permanent home among these people. And yes, I understand the circumstances, but that would be enticing for Jacob. Now, of course, the circumstances would make that very much unenticing, but normally that offer would be generous and an offer he might take up on. But Jacob's sons have other plans. They agree, but they have no intention for it to happen. They do have one condition. They tell Hamor and Shechem that all the men of the city must be circumcised for them to live among them and intermarry with them. As far as I understand the law of circumcision, this would be true, that if they were to intermarry into Israel's family, Jacob's family, they would need to keep the covenant of circumcision. So maybe they're telling a half-truth in some regards, but they have no intent to keep their end of the bargain. I think the sons of Jacob are taking God's law and using it as a tool of deceit and murder. And that is a very grave thing. Continue reading with me in verse 18. Now their words seemed reasonable to Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. The young man did not delay to do the thing because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. Now he was more respected than all the household of his father. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, These men are friendly with us. Therefore let them live in the land and trade in it. For behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. Only on this condition will the men consent to live with us, to become one people, that every male among us be circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. All who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and to his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. So Hamor and Shechem agree. They find it reasonable, and Shechem is very eager to do just that. They meet this with resounding approval. But then they also go to the men of the city, the elders at the gate, the men of renown, and say, this is what we want to do. We want to intermarry with these people and let them live among us. Only all the men have to be circumcised. And I'm honestly surprised that they so quickly and so easily agree. But they do have a reason for this agreement. It seems like Shechem and Hamor are presenting this to them, but they agree with it. They themselves are thinking it as well. Will not their livestock and their property and all their animals be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will live with us. Jacob is very wealthy. People see that, and they want the wealth of Jacob to be their own, and this is an easy way to do so, apparently, to them. And so they consent. Keep reading with me in verse 25. Now it came about on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took a sword and came upon the city unawares and killed every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house, because they had and went forth. Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds and their donkeys, and that which was in the city and that which was in the field. And they captured and looted all their wealth and all their little ones and their wives, even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have brought trouble on me by making me odious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and my men being few in number, and they will gather together against me and attack me, and I will be destroyed, I and my household. But they said, Should he treat our sister as a harlot? So we want to note Simeon and Levi's sin here. It says that Jacob's sons were angry. It says that Jacob's sons were deceitful with Hamor and Shechem. But it specifically mentions that Simeon and Levi were the ones to go out and do the killing of the people. They are the ones who go out and murder the men of the city. We're not told why it's just them, as it seems like this plan was conceived by all of Jacob's sons. And you notice the change in language. Simeon and Levi do the killing. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the edge of the sword. They took Dinah from Shechem's house and went forth. And then, verse 27, Jacob's sons came upon the slain and looted the city. If I understand the change in wording correctly there, it seems as if all the sons are doing the looting. I could be wrong about that, but that would be my understanding of the text there. And so, is this all of Jacob's sons' plans, and then Simeon and Levi do the killing? That seems to be the case. But what Simeon and Levi have done, committing this, you could call it a genocide, is going to have consequences that will last for thousands of years. And Jacob is understandably upset, angry at his sons for what they have done. And while he states only one reason, we should not think so little of Jacob to think that he does not recognize that this is a grave injustice, that this is a sin in the eyes of the Lord. But the reason that Jacob states for his anger is that he is a stranger in a foreign land with no army to speak of, and his sons have just killed all the men of a city and looted it. That reputation is now going to follow Jacob wherever he goes. At best, he's not going to be welcome in any city in the land. At worst, the inhabitants of the land are going to hear about it, view him as a threat, and destroy him and his family, which is what he says in the text. That's what he fears will happen. And so Jacob does have a right to be upset on multiple levels here. But even after Jacob corrects his sons, they're still stubborn. He's raised a very good point that even immoral people can understand. Even his foolish sons can understand the idea of self-preservation. You don't go kill all these people because now all the inhabitants of the land are going to want to kill us. That's very simple to understand even for the fool. But these sons are so foolish and so stubborn that they do not listen and they justify themselves. And it shows the stubbornness that's going to continue to be a problem for these men. They reply, should he treat our sister as a harlot? Basically, he got what he deserved, is how they would see that. This is not an easy chapter to study, not an easy chapter to read. And some of the applications are not easy as well. Typically, I only come away with only one application at the end of a chapter, but I have a few tonight, and I hope you'll listen with me as I go through these. Number one, while this is a horrible thing that happened, maybe God worked through this. The men of the city were agreeable to intermarry, and probably were before all of this transpired. And Shechem's actions and lack of consequences, I think, shows the wickedness of at least the rulers of this city, if not the whole city. Where was Hamor's ire when he found out what Shechem had done? He doesn't seem to have any scruples at all. He's more than happy to marry them off. And so these were evil people. And perhaps God used this awful and horrible event to keep Jacob's family from intermarrying with these people. Now, that is not to say that God caused the event. That is not what we're saying. But God can use evil things, evil deeds to further His purpose. Exhibit A would be Jesus dying on the cross. The schemes of evil people putting to death an innocent man, and God used it for the salvation of mankind. God may have used it here as well. Another thing that I want to make application is two wrongs don't make a right. What Shechem did was heinous. We need to understand that. Anyone who knew and did nothing about it, as Hamor seemed to do, was also heinous. What Simeon and Levi did, though, was also heinous. Even to only murder Shechem would have been wrong, would have been heinous. But they murdered every man in the city and looted them and took even their wives, I assume as slaves. Listen, we can sit here 4,000 years later reading from a book And we, I think, can see clearly with our glasses on right now that this was wrong. We can pronounce judgment upon these people and say, yes, Shechem and Hamor, you were wrong. Yes, Simeon and Levi, and the brothers as well, seemingly. What you did was wrong. Well, let me ask you, as delicately as I can, but also still trying to get the point across. If someone did what Shechem did to someone who was close to you, would you want to kill them? Look, I know my heart, and I confess to you that, yes, at the very least, that thought would cross my mind. And part of that is a righteous anger. You want to see justice for someone doing something so horrible done to them. I understand that, but Satan is going to twist that and use that to make you forget that that's not your place. Turn with me to Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, and look at verse 19. Paul says, "Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. And if he is thirsty, give him a drink, for in so doing you will heap burning coals on his head." We read those verses, and those should be, I think, the familiar verses to you. Don't take personal revenge, leave room for the wrath of God. God said, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." Do you know where that's from? What passage that is quoted from? It's quoted from the Song of Moses. It's quoted when Israel is celebrating leaving Egypt and coming into the Promised Land, and talks about Israel's enemies, the ones who treated them harshly, the ones who were not kind to them. And God says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." That saying is a promise, and maybe we don't think of it as a promise. Maybe sometimes we think of it more as, okay, well, I can't get revenge on this person because God said vengeance is His. No. That's the wrong way to think of it. The way to think of it is everything's going to be okay. God is going to take care of it. That's a promise. Vengeance is His. He will repay. And God is so much better at dealing out justice than we ever could be. Finally, we need to not be stubborn in the face of correction. Jacob corrected his sons and reminded them that their actions had consequences, but they did not heed him. And they dug into their stance, and Jacob's correction fell on deaf ears. And I wonder how many times we do the same thing to the Lord's correction. Whether it's me or someone else standing up here or down below giving an invitation, they read a passage that corrects us. And we say, well, in this case I was justified. Or we don't even pay attention to it at all. We don't even realize that it applies to us. I wonder how many times God chastens us, disciplines us through events in our lives, and we don't seem to pay attention. We need to be less stubborn, more willing to listen, more willing to face correction by the Lord, so that we do not become like Jacob's sons. And so this evening, I hope that this has been beneficial to you. I hope that maybe something has applied to you directly tonight. And if it has, and if you need to make corrections this evening, we'd be happy for you to do so. If you need to obey the gospel, believing in Jesus Christ, repenting of your sins, confessing Jesus before men, and being baptized for the remission of sins. Or if you need to make correction as a Christian, confessing your sin before God, we'd be happy to help you in that as well. Won't you come while we stand and sing?